So, ladies and gentlemen, beginning with our topic, Revolutionizing E-commerce and Financial Services with Digital Public Infrastructure, let me now call upon our panelists. For our moderator, we have Ms. Avanne Dubash, anchor ET Now, and speakers being Mr. T. Koshy, MD and CEO, Open Network for Digital Commerce, and Mr. Neelkanth Mishra, Chief Economist, Axis Bank, and Head of Global Research and Managing Director, Axis Capital, Axis Bank. Let's give them a mighty round of applause as we welcome our dignitaries on stage.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining in. And unfortunately, Mr. Neelkanth Mishra is stuck in a bit of traffic, but he will be joining us very shortly. So I have you all to myself, Mr. Koshy. That's good news. All right, I just want to put a little bit of context to the topic that we will be discussing today at hand. And, it's a very evolving landscape when we talk about digital transformation. India has clearly been at the forefront of this, and we've seen world-class digital public infrastructure. There's been that synergy between digital payments and digital infrastructure, and that's what I want to really talk about with you. So, Mr. Koshy, given that we've seen this huge shift that has taken place towards digitization, the establishment of DPI, how do you think the introduction of India's digital public infrastructure has really led to the scalability of e-commerce platforms?
Thank you. See, if you look at the world of e-commerce, anywhere, not just in India, anywhere in the world, you would see that few enterprises having a predominant control on every segment. Whether it's a consumer products, even in India, same thing. Consumer products, there'll be two companies with about 70-80% market share, and a few of them. You look at food, you'll have few of them. So what is there is that they have been able to create very powerful proprietary protocol based solution that give them a stranglehold so long as they manage to get a certain minimum user base. So that is the way the globally e-commerce is going. It means that the innovation, competition, specialization, etc. is limited to a few enterprises. Those few enterprises are trying to maximize their user base, whether on the supply side or on the demand side. What we are, in fact, probably you would have seen in the newspapers, etc., even the developed countries are trying to address this issue of concentration and associated practices through regulation. So India has done a very smart thing by deciding to use technology and market with enabling policy. When I say technology and market, create foundational digital rail as a common infrastructure. That is the big difference that we have done. And that gives an opportunity for everybody to compete. Like, for example, when you have I'll give you two examples. When you have good highways across the country, it gives everybody an opportunity to use that. And toll is not just, it doesn't matter whether you're running a bike or whether you're running a truck. You can use that to run your business. And you don't have to pay a toll based on the size of your business. You pay a toll based on the usage. So that's a spirit of digital public infrastructure. Everybody gets the equal opportunity to play in the digital market.
So, given that you're talking about an equal opportunity in the digital market, would steps or would initiatives like the India Stack, for instance, that has really laid the foundation when it comes to, streamlining operations and interoperable digital ecosystems. Is that a step in the right direction?
Of course, that is exactly the thing. So what have we done? We have created the variety of components to build on top. The identity on top, to identify everybody. You have UPI, which is to get a smooth and equal opportunity transaction in the money side. See, if you look at business has two, any time when you do a transaction, let's say I'm buying something from you. I'm a buyer, you are a seller. I pay you money, you give me the goods. So what UPI has done is the payment side became very smooth, efficient, and interoperable. What the next DPI is trying to do is the ONDC, which I am doing, is to make the good side of transaction interoperable. So in that way, these elements are giving the rails on the top of which everybody can build their business.
Mr. Neelkanth Mishra as well joining in. Good afternoon. We were just talking about this huge shift that we've seen towards digitization, the establishment of DPI, etc. How would you look at it in terms of helping the security and the scalability of e-commerce platforms?
So I think several of the points I think Koshy has already raised. I would look at it on three different levels. The first is that it makes the catchment area much bigger, meaning that if you're just relying on cash on delivery, the transaction costs are much higher, the returns are 10-15% higher. So for the business to expand to new geographies, you need digital payment modes. And then you are restricted by the penetration of credit cards. I mean, all the old problems. And I think UPI and the India stack have definitely helped solve for that. The second big thing is that by making people comfortable in transacting on their phones, it is bringing down the psychological barriers for making payments on the phone. So even if you go or online, so if you go to the website and you start making payments, you become much more comfortable because you've already done it several times. And I think these are very important psychological barriers that have been broken. And the third is that it has allowed for new forms of payments and credit to emerge. Like, buy now, pay later would never have emerged if not for some of these solutions that exist. So I think the India stack, the digitization, I think has helped scale up well beyond what credit cards or debit cards would have done for us.
While you are, of course, talking about that, psychological barriers have been broken, etc., do you think that there is still that digital divide, especially in India, that exists and has enough been done, for example, with the use of machine learning or AI to bridge this?
100%. I think, just this morning, in one of the sessions I was part of, we were discussing how 95% of transactions seem to be on WhatsApp type driven by men. So we have not crossed the gender divide. So I think not too many of these payments are being made by women. That's one. Second, anywhere between 70 to 90%, depending on who you ask, of the operating system language on smartphones is not English. I mean, only 10-15% of Indians are very familiar with English. And unless you can solve for the multilingual aspects, unless you can, solve for the cultural factors that prevent or that have slowed the advent of women onto the internet and from making payments, I think you're not going to see the next level of growth. So, while UPI is still growing at 40-50%, it used to be growing at 100%. So we are now starting to see that phase where we need to start thinking about new areas of growth. And therefore, what AI ML can do, for example, say runtime translation of websites which are not going to distort the meaning. So as we know in digital merchandising, storefronts, physical storefronts, you have pretty much the same thing that you can see. But in digital merchandising, there are more than millions of potential storefronts that can appear. And somewhere between 70 to 80% of people don't go beyond the first page when they're buying. When I read this, I realized I do the same, right? So we buy pretty much whatever appears on the front page. And it is when you use AI ML that you are able to customize much better and therefore help the drive or to deeper penetration.
I want to bring up this point as well because just before this, I was interacting with someone at Peak 15 and they were talking about, yes, there are the Zomatos of the world, but there's still that large population who is not accustomed to these apps. Or when you go to the rural areas, they'll say, you know what, give me my delivery a day later, but at a discounted price. I prefer that. I just wanted to understand from you, Mr. Koshy, if you could build on what Mr. Mishra was talking about, that until we actually solve for these cultural factors or barriers, there will still be that digital divide that exists?
You made a very important point of the diversity in our country. The challenge of the today's e-commerce enterprises are India or anywhere, their focus is in a real sense to the creamy layer. If you look at what's the penetration, you and all of us sitting here are very heavy users. But what's the penetration? 7%, 8%, 9%, less than 10 for sure. That's on the
The
buy
numbers
side.
are negligible, yeah.
And mine and seller side, it's even lesser. So somebody other day, very lightheartedly explained to me that that is for the avocado segment of the society, which is the people sitting here. But that's not just India.
Yeah.
It is much broader and large. And so, if you have, that is where if you have the technology solutions to address this. Let me just explain in a quick fashion. That is what the open network is trying to do, using a standardized open protocol. So what is the outcome of this? Eventually, every product or service which is catalogable will be available on this network using this protocol. Today, if I am a seller, if I am to be there in multiple platforms, I have to go and integrate everywhere. How many places will I integrate? 1, 2, 3? And many places I won't be able to because the conditions are so restricted. Tomorrow, I will make myself visible. It's like me creating an HTML page for my new site. Different kind of buying applications will come and help their kind of customers to buy what is relevant for them. Let me make a quick example to sort of. Today, there are only, for example, if you want to have consumer products or if you want to have food, there are 2 or 3 sellers and they are optimizing, of course, in a fantastic way for their client segment. Imagine tomorrow, a media company will say, till now, I have a set of people who read, who have this reading habit. I know their profile. I want to extend products for them. Today, if they want to, let's say they want to extend food for them. Today, if they, the platform world, they have to go and tie up with all the restaurants, which is not their capability. In an open network, because they're already there, these enterprises will be able to, I can give you a customer interface. In fact, we already have an example of this. Dainik Jagran came with the Kojali.com. They don't have to tie up with any sellers at all because sellers are already there. And we are seeing different segments, just to show you. Gaming company come and say, hey, while these guys are gaming, I want to help them buy pizza, popcorn. And so they don't have to go and tie up with the pizza company and popcorn company because it's already available. So that is why I'm saying is you will kind of this diversity, like and each of the, probably there would be some regional enterprise saying that I will do something very special, culturally attuned because I can use this technology. The beauty of this digital public infrastructure is standardization of these components and protocol help the enterprises to be innovative and specialized, but still the protocol stitching them together.
Right, that's the benefit of the standardized protocol. But Neelkanth, if I could get in your view as well when it comes to some of the issues such as privacy or fraud detection or security, has enough been done on this front?
Look, these are areas where you can never say enough has been done. I mean, this is a cat and mouse game. You will find that if you plug a hole, another opens. So there's a business of hacking and exploiting people. But I think we have made some good progress. And especially when you think about privacy in the Indian context, we shouldn't try to copy stuff that has been implemented, say, abroad. So you have a whole spectrum, right? So on the one extreme maybe is China, where potentially all data is available to the state, and while there are separate platforms, but there are very few privacy-related issues that emerge. In the US, again, it's completely laissez-faire. You have, people or companies use the data that is available to them till the time that they get sued. The companies get sued and then they pay penalty and say, okay, I won't do it again. The Europeans have taken the other extreme and said that, everything is protected. In India, I think the approach with the DPDP law and the rules are now expected. I think we are taking a very innovative approach, which is a good midpoint, which is very suitable for us. The first thing is that there is consent-based data sharing, that you allow the owner. So basically, the principle is that the person owns the data, and they can allow it to be shared. You cannot just say you can't share anywhere, Because for many people, and especially I think what Koshy's team is trying to do in ONDC as well, where allow credit to happen in 6 minutes and all that, I think it is when the transaction data is shared that credit becomes available. So I think the definition of privacy as India is, and we are kind of charting a new path where you allow a mechanism which is scalable, which allows for consent-based sharing of data. On the data security side, yes, and I think the fact that there are so many people who are using this for the first time, I think the extent of frauds and people being cheated out of well-earned money is not something you can be taken trivially. But I do think that the secure mechanisms like the two-factor authentication, and I think there are mechanisms that are now coming up which should help control the spread of this. But clearly, a lot more needs to be done.
Yeah, and would you concur with this, Mr. Koshy, talking about, some of these loopholes when it comes to, the steps that have been taken in with privacy, with security, and how ONDC as well is enabling the same?
Yeah, absolutely. See, for example, like Neelkanth very correctly said, the legal framework is getting sophisticated day by day to establish rules, practices, and processes for how anybody who is dealing with data should handle it well. That is a national priority, it is being done. Second thing is, like, in a platform world, everything is concentrated in one platform. So they have to be following all the checks and balances to be done. In a network world, it's like, in the internet, there are a number of hosting enterprises are doing, and each of them have to look after. So the way that is being there is that as a network enabler, we have to put in checks and balances to prevent a network-wide meltdown. And each of the participants will have to take care of their own. The beauty of the design is that network-wide checks and balances are reasonably strong. I will never say it is ever perfect. It is continuously evolved. So that even if one of the individuals do not handle it well, it will not melt down the network. And secondly, any enterprises who's become a part of the network has to go through extremely a amount of 6 checks and balances and testing, including security testing with the authorized enterprises, to be admitted into the system. And since they are all not stitched together like in a platform, they are asynchronous API. So the extent to which each of them can mess up the others are relatively lesser, significantly lesser.
Neelkanth, some of the or most of the digital public infrastructure projects worldwide, they center on identity platforms, much like India, for example, Swiss and Sweden, etc. How are you looking at the kind of progress that we've made in DPI if we were to compare ourselves to the rest of the globe?
So this is one area where clearly we are far ahead. I think we have made significant progress. I think Aadhaar, which I'm now very proud to be part of, though of course most of the good work was done before I joined, it was pretty much the starting point. And then we have leveraged the spread of mobile telephony and then of course the government, they went push to give everyone a bank account. In fact, as one of the Fed governors who was here, the reason why something like UPI is not ramping up as fastly in the US is because the Fed is refusing to make it mandatory for all banks. That no, they need to have choice. Now, instead, I think the measures that India has taken, realizing that in order to make digital payments, financial services available at the bottom of the pyramid, you need to bring down costs, and therefore you need to build. I mean, DPI as a concept, it was India's. So digital public infrastructure is pretty much a word that wouldn't have existed if India didn't. So we are far ahead. But at the same time, the challenges that we are facing are also very unique in the sense that we are trying to grow the economy at 4 times the pace that the developed world did when they were at this stage of development. That's point one. Because they grew from medium or low income to rich, higher income in 150, 200 years. We are trying to do it in 50, 60 years. We are also trying to work through a channel where at a phase of growth where income inequality naturally rises. And when the other economies were going through this phase, they were not democracies. But we need to go through this process. And as we are going through this, it is very important that the DPI layers keep getting stacked and we keep improving consistently so that we can keep digging deeper and deeper into the income pyramid, not just in terms of providing financial services, but also providing credit, providing other forms of capital at the right scale at which they want. And therefore, things like Oken or, credit that I think ONDC is now trying to provide, ULI that the RBI is talking about, these become even more important. So we need to keep innovating. What we at Aadhaar are also trying to do, and as we speak, there is a parallel session going on there where we're talking about face authentication, which makes things much easier, safer. So we need to keep innovating and hitting new grounds because we can't stop at this level. I mean, on many fronts, we are stagnated. For example, uh, the cell phone, the smartphone penetration or the teledensity in rural India has stagnated at 60%. So it went very sharply from 2008 to 14 and 16, and then it's kind of stagnated. Smartphone prices, which were falling, have kind of stagnated. In fact, they're starting to go up now. And these are challenges which are preventing further deepening of the ecosystem. So there's a lot of hard work to be done in the next 20 years to solve some of these problems.
Speaking of innovation, Mr. Koshy, continuous innovation is very critical, especially for businesses in this space to stay relevant, to stay responsive to market dynamics. How do you think that companies can best adapt to some of these ever-changing technologies?
This is, again, picking up from what Neelkanth was saying. I'll speak a lot from the focus of from what I'm doing, which is essentially transforming commerce. When you say transforming commerce, it's got a far-reaching impact on practically every segment, whether it is food, whether it's B2B, B2C, goods, services. Everything is going to be impacted, both on the distribution channel as well as on the supply side. When there is, and the beauty is the standardized protocol which enable all this being interoperable become an exceedingly powerful stimulator for innovation and specialization. When the challenge that is there is, so it gives humongous opportunity for every small building block to be innovative. For example, in the e-commerce, I can say I'm specializing only in creating nice catalog. I'm specializing in only giving warehouse as a service. But they can all be stitched together. That is a positive side of it. The challenge, as you pointed out, is that I cannot have a moat sitting around me to protect because I'm so big. If you are able to do something that I'm doing much better and in a much cost-effective and efficient fashion, I become relevant. That's the nature of that's the way the nature works. Plus one innovation. From the amoeba in the primordial soup to us was plus one innovation every point of time. From the guys in the jungle to the atomic man was continuous innovation. So what happened to the current digital commerce that it became like very limited. The innovations limited to only a few enterprises. But now it is opening up, so it will actually drive innovation and specialization, and also you will see creative destruction. If you don't well, you will die. So it will become that way more competitive. And at the end of it, it becomes much better for society as a whole.
Do you think, Neelkanth, that we can see the private sector playing a role here, maybe providing financial resources to DPI in the form of, a collaborative move, direct investments, or PPP?
See, the actual investments that go into DPI is not much. I mean, it's called digital public infrastructure, but it's not like a national highway which costs 50 crores a kilometer. The DPI, and as the government has designed it, and I think that's the right way to do it, is that you design the guardrails and then define the rules of the system, like DPDP. The data privacy laws there is a framework, and everything else is private. So even when you think about the architecture, say, in the stock market or even in UPI, right? I mean, other than, I mean, NPCI, which is also, by the way, I mean, in theory, private. The point is that the whole ecosystem is driven by private hands. What perhaps we need to also aim for is, as we develop going forward, it is very important to have open channels of communication between the private sector and the regulators. And if such an open channel cannot be built because of natural distrust on both sides, and you know, the regulator and the regulated cannot really become friends. So it's very hard to do that at scale. So then creating intermediaries, which then become trusted partners on both sides and then carry the thread for a long time. But that's where I see the private sector playing a much bigger role. See, very often regulations don't match up to expectations because the regulators are not better informed. In fact, when in the electronics industry, some of the people who were at the forefront of designing policies which have carried us to this stage, they were saying that it was our mistake that we were not educating the policymakers of the opportunities that exist in hardware manufacturing. It is only when we started interacting with them and educating them that we started getting the policies, and therefore the whole industry has thrived. So similarly, I think the private sector's inputs in terms of what's really working, what's not working, and then providing that feedback is perhaps much more productive, because this is where, I mean, there are feet on the street and real feedback coming through. I don't think it costs a lot of money to run digital public infrastructure.
And Mr. Koshy, if I could get in your views as well in terms of how you could see, you know, the private sector playing a role. Do you think that much can be done?
No, Neelkanth has already given one dimension. I mean, very, very important role. Thing is, as he said, we are creating the rails, on the top of which the innovation has to come from private sector. And the innovation has to be business viable. And the government's job is not to run business. Government job is to say that I am giving you the highways, I am giving you the rail, on top of which private enterprises should come and give smart solution. I'll give you one more dimension. This is on one side, they're creating with new innovation and business opportunity. But there's another dimension which you have started seeing. Is that when there is standardized solutions like this, it gives opportunity for philanthropic capital, CSR, all of them come together, because to empower the larger community, especially underserved and unserved. I'll just give one example what's happening in our segment. You know, some philanthropic capital like Gates Foundation and some CSR came together and said, now that there's an open network, I can improve the livelihood of 1 million women in the next 5 years' time by enhancing their life, their income earning bar by 25%, because there is an open network that is giving them an opportunity, that is giving them a possibility for inclusion, that is giving them an access to market, that is giving them an access to credit, that is giving them the access to skill. So it is not just enterprises being innovative, creating new opportunities and new business solution, but also making contributions, leveraging this digital rail. So digital rail works in both ways. Opportunity for new business and opportunity for transformation.
What about the government's role, Neelkanth? You know, there have been initiatives, Digital India, Startup India, Jan Dhan Yojana, to name a few. How have you looked at that role in aiding, the startup ecosystem and the technological landscape in India?
No, so when the government says something, so you have to view it on two different dimensions. The first is how much money is at play. So I don't think fiscally the government has done a lot, right? So if they say Startup India or Digital India. But I think when the government gives a message, or let's say even Make in India, when it was launched, it was seen as an exhortation to the country that we need to do more Make in India. And so what that does is that at all levels of government, then the policy makers, the rule makers, I think they are the lawmakers, everyone is aligned to that, starts to get aligned to that slogan. And the private sector also gets the message that this is the government's priority. Similarly, when we talk about Startup India or Digital India in a whole range of initiatives. And then you give a target. See, to align the minds of millions of people, it is very important to have a target towards which you are running. And by giving a target that we will have a $1 trillion digital economy in 5 years, that the startups are creating are so valuable, they make it acceptable for a kid to go to their parents and say that, look, I'm going to do a startup. So I think those are areas where I think the government's mission mode statements become much more powerful. I don't think there's much of fiscal impetus here.
You don't think that there's much of fiscal, sorry.
Because the total spending from the government on some of these missions is, given the size of the GDP, is actually very small. But by emphasizing, for example, suppose you, like the angel tax repeal. Now, if it was not for the government saying that startups are very important and that they are going to drive the next level of growth and innovation, the tax authorities may not have been compelled to actually take it that seriously, because it affects a small set of companies.
And Mr. Koshy, if we could get in your final thoughts on that, the government's role. I mean, our topic today is revolutionizing e-commerce and financial services with digital public infrastructure. How far have we come? How much further to go?
No, we are doing pretty well. Like I said, we are setting global examples, and the government, like Neil very correctly said, has been the instigator and the enabler. And I think that's a big change. It's not trying to do everything by itself. For example, if you look at even again from my side, while the government gave the push and the initiative and the idea and the support, government did not come and say, I'm going to run it. He said, I'm going to get banks and financial institutions and industry to come together, fund and set up a company and let them make it happen. Give the right kind of policy support and policy coverage and encouragement and the right kind of messaging. And that's the way it has proceeded. So that way, I think that, we are, each of the new DPIs that came is accelerating faster than the previous one.
All right, gentlemen, I'm afraid our time's up, but those have been some very valuable insights. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen. A big round of applause. Mr. Neelkanth Mishra and Mr. T. Koshy. Thank you.